Greetings, I'm Dike Rostant. Welcome back to the TTT News. And in a consistent effort to bring about greater understanding, both generally and specifically between Trinidad and Tobago, we are really pleased to be joined by the Tobago House of Assembly Chairman, Farley Augustine. No, it's the same spelling as Augustine, but I asked, what is it, even though he doesn't necessarily make he won't vex with me, but let's try to do the thing properly. But it is time to go in depth on the THA of tomorrow.
Yes, thank you for having me, Dike.
And I also want to say compliments of this season. It seems as though you just keep winning, literally. So in terms of elections, even though we're not necessarily jumping into the political side or conversation, too tough in this conversation, as well as your recent nuptial. So we want to say congratulations on all fronts to you, sir.
Thank you very much, brother. Thank you a lot.
It is one thing to say, okay, well, when we get into the position, this is what we are going to do. But now that the dust is hopefully starting to settle a little bit, what are some of those main points of emphasis, things that you want to tackle?
One of those main things I want to tackle is contract employment in Tobago, because we have several categories of workers who are contracted by the THA to work on our behalf in all the divisions, all the departments. And for many of them, their contracts are like these 3-month contracts, very temporary looking and sounding. And so they can't get the kind of financial engagements they wish to have with their banks. There isn't that kind of stability. And I think if we have someone working for 2-3 years and you're working these very short-term contractual periods, we might as well give you a longer-term contract, because it means that we have already budgeted for you in terms of your current expenditure, and we have had you consistently for more than a year on these very short-term contracts, and it's having a negative impact on your own life and how you're able to manage your own cash flows and manage your financial arrangements with whatever financial institution you're with. That's something, that's a low-hanging fruit. And so across the board, what I've done has been to ask all of my respective secretary and divisions to put out all of these low-hanging fruits. You know, those things, it's like Christmas time, Dike. It doesn't matter how much you clean. When you get to Christmas time, you find more things to throw away. Think about it that way. You know, we at this place now, the election season is over. We have formed a new government, and I've asked them to look around your respective division. All of those low-hanging fruits that we have had pending for years upon years, not treating with because somebody did not see them as being important enough to treat them. I've asked that we pull all of those low-hanging fruits, pick them early and get them out of the way, which will then clear up resources, clear up time for managing some of the bigger items, the things that will cause some consternation and headaches and some sleepless nights. We're not pushing them down the road, but we are picking the low-hanging fruits first. It doesn't make sense going for the right Julie mango that is way out on a piece of precarious limb, and there's a still one right before your eyes that you could just reach out and touch and pick. You pick those first before getting to those out on a precarious limb.
I think sometimes it's also easier while the grass growing horse starve, you know? So in terms of, and I really take the point of saying, okay, well, banks look at you a certain way when they say, okay, well, we can't put you in this bracket because this is the end of your contract, even though there may be a precedent. You've worked for so many years at the same place, same employee, same rate, but your contract ended at this point in time. So I really appreciate what it is you're saying. But with regard to those things that cause consternation that you may want to address a little further down the road, even though you're not kicking it down the road, what are some of those pros and cons you think of having this kind of 14-to-1 makeup in the House of Assembly? Because I think by that ratio, it'll be easier, it should be easier to move some things in the way that you want them to.
Well, most definitely, it's easier to move things through because we have all the majority that is needed to pass anything before the House, literally. However, that does not lend itself to good governance. And one of the reasons why I have insisted that for some of the bigger ticket items, that we take a little time with them is because I want secretaries to do proper analysis, to get status report on these areas and these projects, to look into what it will take to do them well. Because we have such a large majority, we do not have the luxury of larger mistakes. People will see any mistake we make as being an abuse, even if it's a mistake, even if it's not deliberately done. And so we have to take time to ensure that there is good governance. Not too much time, because then it becomes an issue of procrastinating longer than we should. But we have only been into office some days, not even a full month. The election was on December the 6th, and we got sworn in on December the 9th and 10th, respectively. So we are not even there for a full month in office yet. And so in this month, I specifically asked divisions to do status reports, to analyze where every project is at, to analyze the finances of the respective divisions, so that as we cross over into January, we go into retreat on the 5th of January as a team. We will look at all of these status reports and so on, see where our priorities lie, create some new priorities so that we can press gas thereafter. And when we press gas, we're pressing gas knowing that we have done due diligence in terms of looking at what we have and knowing the situation in every division, and so that we're better able to make informed decisions going forward.
And I know one of the things that you wanted to press gas on was Scarborough and the port. What are some of those incremental steps that you said, okay, well, yes, this is one of the things you want to do. Yes, this is another thing that we want to do with regard to Scarborough and the port?
Well, we're going to start with beautifying Scarborough and the port. You know, and I love using stories and examples from my own life experiences. It's how I reason things. I have encountered in my own life and in several other lives across my district and across Tobago, people who are not wealthy. But you go to some of these homes, people who are poor, living in a wooden house, a board house, as we say. But you ever enter one of these homes and it's immaculately kept? Why am I raising that? We don't have to have a city that looks like Manhattan or that looks like downtown Miami or that looks like Dubai City. But if what we have is immaculately kept, we have a good start. And it doesn't take a lot of heavy lifting to start there. Scarborough is what we have. So we have to start with sprucing it up, ensuring it's clean, it's tidy, ensure that we green the city, we plant the ornamentals all along our city streets, that we treat with all of those very ugly, unused telephone lines and old lines just crisscrossing the street and so on, and even hampering traffic. We need to get rid of some. Those, to me, are the starting points. In this fiscal year, we're also going to look at designing, because to fix Scarborough, we have to spend some time designing what we need and designing it based on the topography, based on the coastal conditions, put some good engineering thought behind the design. That is part of this early stage too, before we could start mixing concrete and doing the heavy lifting. Additionally, one of the earliest projects we will want to do in the city is a transportation hub for the city, because that gives us a lot of bang for our buck. It helps us with creating an efficient transportation network. Tobago does not have the good fortune of having a city gate. We have nothing akin to a city gate, nothing through which we can channel public and private transportation through, with a mixture of retail, shopping, and so on, that will sort of create some order in the city when it comes to people getting transportation to go to various points in the island. And of course, I just came out of a meeting before being interviewed by you, where we were talking digitization and e-transportation and how we could just attach some GPS locators to the regular PTSC buses so that we can create a nice little ticker at the bus stop so you know when your next bus is arriving. Simple things that we see when we travel abroad, when we go to London and look at the Oyster card system and what happens there, or we go to New York and use the metro system. Simple things that we see abroad that really does not cost a whole lot to do. And things like that will make the city a lot more functional, a lot more efficient, and begin to return commerce to Scarborough. Because what has been happening is a lot of our commerce has been fleeing Scarborough and moving to the Southwest Peninsula. That's where Crown Point is, and Canaan, and Bonaccord, moving to that end of the island. But then your major township is dying as a result. And so we have to do some things quickly to make Scarborough much more user-friendly and to make it a place where people want to come and do business.
And in terms of that digitization, that is a point I want to pick up on when we return from the break, because sometimes people can say that, okay, well, you're moving to what it is you see outside, but you're losing what it is you have already. So that is something I want to bring up with you, and I'm sure you're ready to talk about that, but we do that when we return from this break. Stay with us. Welcome back to In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. We are speaking with THA Chief Secretary Farley Augustine. And Mr. Augustine, looking at the fact that digitizing, saying, okay, well, we see this working somewhere else and we want to bring it here. How does that tie in with preserving heritage, culture, and the good things that are already here? And in this point, we speak specifically to the Tobago experience. Thank you.
Well, you know, our heritage is near and dear to us. Tobago, unlike most Caribbean territories, have done a lot to retain our heritage and retain our traditions because it's part of our identity. I see the both things working together. There's synergy between the technology age and preserving our heritage. In fact, we need one to preserve the other. And for me, it's about bringing about efficiency. And let me give you an example. At the moment, if I need to take the bus, I need to purchase a bus ticket. And I get those bus tickets either from PTSC main station somewhere here in Scarborough or from a parlor somewhere in my village. Very often you go to a little parlor in the village to buy a bus ticket. Sorry, we're out of tickets. All the bus tickets has ended. We sold out all. And then now you're left to beg the bus driver and say, oh gosh, give me a blinder. I no ticket, the shop I no ticket, I go buy a ticket someplace on the way down. Imagine if we had moved from the bus ticket system to perhaps using a card system that can be renewed. A card system that you could renew it, you could top it up at a machine. You could push the old card in a machine, get a new one out that is topped up. Or that you can go online and purchase your bus tickets virtually and you use your cell phone to access the bus. That's a way more efficient way of doing it. Same concept, you have to pay for your ticket, you have to pay for your transportation, except that you now have a much more efficient way of doing it. So the use of technology must be to bring about efficiency, to bring about ease of doing business, ease of living, to raise the standard of living, so that your granny, your uncle, those who will be left without a bus ticket out in the village in Lansome or in Charlottesville, and left to beg the bus driver for a drop because the parlor run out of bus tickets. Now have a much more efficient way because you, the grandchild, can just top up granny card for her. And there are many seniors now who are getting on board with the technology, thanks to church now being on Zoom. We're seeing our grannies and aunties on Zoom now. And what COVID has done is that it has shown us, quite forcibly so, that everybody has to jump on board the technology age, and everyone has to now participate in one way or the other, even for our traditional activities. I myself did presentations for the Tobago Festival Commission using the platform. Prior to this period, I'm sure I would have been in some on some stage somewhere with a microphone, but they needed to look at Tobago's linguistic heritage. And linguistics is one of my fields. And they asked me to do presentation along with Dr. Winford James. And it was completely virtual. We did the presentation and the engagement with the Tobago public. And so more and more, the public is understanding that we need to enhance our lives, be efficient with our structures using digital platforms. And let me add real quickly, I am one of those who believe while we're providing digital platforms, you have to provide secure digital platforms, because people's privacy and people's data should never be jeopardized in favor of wanting to become more efficient.
And I actually had a conversation with Mr. Arnold about the festivals and the fact that there may have been, well, not may have been, but there was a larger reach because of the virtual aspect of it. And the fact that it is virtual like this also allows people who are in Tobago to have a little more of a voice sometimes, because, you know, sometimes they might have one person hogging the microphone and be like, I'm not going to say what I was going to say, as opposed to being able to send in a question, and that space where the questions are is curated by someone who can then bring it across to the facilitators who engage with it in a fulsome manner. But moving forward, one of the things that we're dealing with, though, is the pandemic. And there was a conversation that Dr. Yisrael had saying that there is an advantage to having a different voice, a different approach, deal with health, safety in Tobago. What is your take on it in terms of dealing with the healthcare during the pandemic on the island of Tobago?
I believe we have not communicated well with the public. Now, granted, some members of the public are just careless and reckless. But I believe in large part we have not communicated well. And, you know, we take for granted how we were taught, but very often we attempt to teach the very way we were taught. And for most of us in this country, we went to school when teaching happened in a sort of a dogmatic approach, where the teacher was the authoritative voice and we say to you, do this, don't question me, you just do it. And there was not much engagement. Having been a teacher myself, I learned quite early on that I cannot teach the way I was taught. And I have to teach the way my students will learn, not the way I was taught. And I feel that as a country, from the state perspective, we have not communicated efficiently with the public. And so a lot of the messaging messages are being lost in what people seeing as a very dogmatic approach, as people being bossy, as people telling me what to do. And there isn't sufficient engagement. The education of people isn't done from a very polite perspective. And because of that, a lot is being lost with people putting up automatic barriers. And so what we have said in Tobago is, okay, hold on. We have had all of this going on for a while, pause a bit. Let's take a second look at it. Let's see how we can re-engage people. What are some of those creative ways in which we can tell people to take their vaccine? And I'll be the first to admit, I have even members of my own team who have not been convinced to take the vaccine that we're working on. I have spoken to medical practitioners here who saying, look, Chief, I have members of staff, I'm talking about medical members of staff, who have chosen not to be vaccinated. One told me that her staff told her, look, she prefer to go in and live in the bush than take the vaccine, right? And we're talking about medical staff members. And so it means then that we have to rework how we communicate with people. You look around the world, attempts at mandatory vaccination are being met with fierce opposition all around the world. In London, they're protesting to the point where these protests have become super spreader events. In the US, things are being held up in the court with court cases upon court cases. We have had right in the Caribbean, I think it was either Antigua and Barbuda or St. Kitts Nevis, they had a mandatory policy and they had to scale it back and now have a policy of grace and mercy because the medical staff just refused to take it and say, okay, You could shut down the system, let everybody die. In running our checks here in Tobago, only 50% of TRHA took the vaccine. It means that if in the middle of January we decide, okay, we are not going to pay our staff who are unvaccinated, we could see only 50% of the workers come out at the hospital, which will mean more dead people than COVID. You understand? And therefore, I'm saying, I have said to my team, spend this holiday period looking at how we can creatively send the messages out. Maybe we need to do some more calypsos. Maybe we need to tap into the same Tobago heritage and our art forms here, the speech band, the dramatists, our filmmakers, where our influencers, we have influencers who can turn out thousands of likes and clicks in seconds, in minutes, why are we not using them to help influence the process?
And speaking about the influencers, Chief Sec, I want to lean on your patience, thanks, because we need to end this aspect of it for television. But if you wait, we continue a little bit. So if you're tuning in via the social platforms, you get the rest of this conversation. If you're not, though, I want to thank you for tuning in to In Depth with me, Dike Rostant, and the Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, Farley Augustine. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, so if you are here with us, that means that you are on a social platform. Thank you so much for taking the time to get the rest of this conversation. And Mr. Chief Sec, looking at influencers, looking at the way that sometimes we look at something and think, okay, well, it's just one thing, but there's so many spin-offs and ripple effects. What are some of those things that we need to go into a little more and saying, okay, well, it might just be one step, but this one step will have so many implications and ripple actions?
I think one of the things that we have to go into more is generally in Trinidad, we need to open up governance. You know, we have this mindset that governance is really just about those we elect into office. But let us scale back that hackneyed model of governance a bit. Open the doors, open the doors. And let's say we allow for those that are not elected, but those who have influence, those who have talent, those who have expertise, to come and operate on behalf of the government in selling our messages and pitching our proposals. I think we will get a lot more done that way. Because while politicians are excellent at communicating to people to get their votes, we are not always excellent at communicating to people after having their votes, you know, and I think in opening up governance in a broader way and allowing more people to come and have a seat at the table and to participate and be part of the leadership model for the country and for the island, what we will be doing quite easily is getting a lot of proposals actualized. And most people don't realize that governing comes with an art of negotiation too, and compromise. You are constantly negotiating with people. You're constantly having to pitch compromises with people. And let me give you a quick example. I'm in Castaras, I'm always there. And down at the base, full of people, liming down at the base. I don't know if you've ever been to Castara and gone down to the beach area in Castara there. So people there roasting fish, people there playing draft, and I'm talking about during COVID, right? People there hanging out, people waiting to purchase the fish, people liming, they're all talking, people at the supermarket. So it's a bustling commerce happening in and around the beach. And I found myself the first couple half an hour almost hoarse telling everybody, please pull up your mask. Why are you here? Why are you not going home? And then I realized I was getting exhausted. And I said, but let's try a different approach, right? Try a different approach. Went to my vehicle, pull a box of masks. I pulled one of the fishermen who I felt were very popular among them and very influential. Okay, I need your help. Go around and ensure everybody who is not wearing a mask, that you give them a mask and they're wearing the mask properly. And then I call another one. I say, okay, here's a box of hand sanitizers. Go around, distribute the hand sanitizers. Then I called a third one and I said, look, let me put people in clusters instead of everybody being in one large group. Let me put the health ordinances no more than 10 in a group. So let's cater for about 7. Have 7 around where the draft playing. Have another 7 where they're doing the grilled fish. Have another 7 out by the supermarket there. So let people be in smaller clusters. And I was able to achieve through 3 other individuals in the village what I could not do myself. Because I was not working smart. I was trying to exert all the energies in getting them to behave properly and so on. It did not work. Now, picture that example on a larger scale. I don't understand why, as politicians, we often think we need to do it all. We need to say it all. We need to communicate all the messages ourselves. There are people who can get the job done better than we can. Let us be the best policy makers we can and find the best people to communicate these policies and help negotiate with people on our behalf, on behalf of the government. And in opening governance in that way, we can achieve a whole lot more.
And I think part of that is allowing access, not just access to making policy, but access to inviting critique. And I say it in critique of the issues versus a person or personality. Because I think sometimes that feeling of vulnerability, and I can't say it for your case, but this is my little neck of the woods, never having jumped out to that level. But even like with your victory speech on the evening of the 6th of December, you said there are real people who know me small and in Pampers, basically, just transcribing. And I want you to be responsible for me. Let me know when I'm going wrong. Let me know when you think I could tweak this. Let me know when you think I'm getting too big for my britches. Not that I'm being a big man and organizing stuff, but when it really seems as though is more ego than efficiency that you're seeing at place. So being able to allow for that village to continue raising the individual so that on the larger scale things get done. Is that what I was hearing from you?
And you're 100% correct. And let me tell you, it's easy to get carried away in the office. Eh? You know what it is to move from driving yourself, opening your own doors, making 2 and 3 trips to your car from your office, doing all the heavy lifting, to waking up on mornings and a vehicle is outside your door, security is there, they're refusing to allow you to open the door for yourself, they're driving you everywhere you need to go and bringing you back home. If you're not careful, then that changes your personality. If you don't stay on the ground, then you will at some point no longer be grounded. Now, my security is having a difficult time with me because I am yet to allow them full reign. I still tell them, I said, no, I'm not doing anything this weekend, and still just wake up and jump in my vehicle and drive go northside or drive go Charlottesville and hang out with my people. And then they will see somebody post a photo online, or I will get a call from special branch and say, but boss, you should tell us when you're leaving home. You tell us you're not leaving home and we're hearing you in Charlottesville, we're hearing so and so place. And they will hear because a police jeep will pass by and see me there just interacting. And one of the reasons for doing that is not that I am careless about the security or I think nobody will threaten me. I mean, I think I am more secure among my cautious villagers than I am with special branch. They, trust me, they will lock down the city more than special branch. They know who comes, who goes, and they see everything. Nothing passes there, right? So you can't get past a villager in terms of security. But on a serious note, though, I am insistent on doing that because it's a way of remaining grounded. And the number one complaint you get from people all around the country, not even in Tobago alone, in Trinidad as well, is that people say, we see you now, but after you win, we don't see you until next election. They say that all the time. And the reason for saying that is because people want to be able to have direct access to their representative. Not that they believe their rep or the MP will be able to provide every single thing they need. But people want to hear you say to them, I try, but I didn't get through yet, or this still waiting, or somebody says, hold up. They feel comforted in knowing that you are actually looking out for their best interests, that you are actually there with them in the struggle, that you can show up at their funeral service or show up at their home when somebody died, or show up at a wedding invite or at a christening at the church, or you just show up to watch a football match. Those things mean a lot to people, more than all the roads you can pave, because they feel as though their leader is one of them, part of them. And they get a chance to come and say, hey, boss, me and like we do that. And I've gotten some of that already. So some have come to me and said, boss, look how long I'm trying to call you. I'm calling you and saying your phone. And I say, oh gosh, me head hot. And I'm trying to put everything in place. And I have to take out my phone now and show them the nearly 2,000 WhatsApp messages that are trying to get clear from since election, with all the congratulatory note. And every time I try to clear a message, people responding in a conversation. So I could only get through 10 or so. And so it's difficult to get all clear and the message is getting lost. So I have to take out my phone now and explain to them and show them the actual phone. And then they say, oh, I understand what you're saying. But if you don't have that kind of engagement with people, they go away saying, Farley reach and you get biggish. Your chief said no, so you can't talk to me now, we biggish now. And they miss the real reason why there are some hiccups in the communication. And that's why, and perhaps it's a tip to all my other politicians in the country. Stay on the ground. They will work less hard at an election time. Trust me, mark my words. Stay on the ground. And you're hearing it from the person who won his seat in the last state elections with the largest margin of victory and the largest voter turnout on the island. Stay on the ground. It's important. It's an important asset. Stay on your ground.
And it is important, just before we close, to ask about your views on collaborating with central government, charting the way forward for Trinidad and Tobago generally, Tobago specifically.
Right, and I got to ask this question because I'm sure many have heard some very hardline positions from me when it comes to the issue of Tobago's autonomy. And I intend to spend some time in Trinidad, talking to Trinidad friends and family and explaining what this really is about, so that the country as a whole will understand where Tobago comes from historically. The truth is, Tobago was by far a more advanced democracy prior to being joined with Trinidad. You're talking about an island prior to being joined with Trinidad that had its own currencies, own chief justice, own judicial system, and autonomous assembly, unlike the legislative council that was in Trinidad. And then being disrupted one day and being told, hey, we're joining you with Trinidad because all they don't know how to behave, all they're protesting and blocking road, all they're behaving like Watson Duke. So we joining you with Trinidad and you have no say in it. And the people protest and say, no, we want to keep our own island, our own independence. And no, we're joining with Trinidad. Bam, you're joining with Trinidad. And the rest is history. We're here as part of one country called Trinidad and Tobago. And we are appreciative of the one country. Not everything we inherited, we decided ourselves. There are many, many things that we have inherited in terms of our governance that just came from colonialism, that came from our British masters that we had no say over. But we're here now. And more or less we're saying, hey, if Tobago has to advance its development, Tobago has to take management of its socio-economic and cultural development. And we have to be able to pass laws that will facilitate those things. And I'll give you a simple example. For the longest while, we're trying to get marine parks done in Tobago. We have some protection somewhat for the Boko Reef. The last bill that we sent down to the parliament, because we can't do it ourselves. So we have a circuitous route by which we would get a bill to parliament. We have to pass it in the assembly, send it down through the prime minister to cabinet. Cabinet then decides whether it's good enough to go before parliament. carries to Parliament, and then Parliament will vote it, and then it becomes a law passed, an assembly law passed. We can't do it ourselves. Think about it, something as simple as a marine park. In November last year, we passed that bill, sent it down to Parliament, trying to create marine parks for Tobago. More than a year has passed. It has not come out of cabinet. It has not made its way to the Parliament floor. It's not on the government agenda. It's not given priority. But for us in Tobago, it might seem simple to the Trini that we just want to create marine parks. That's a small thing. But for us who are about green economy, who are about ecotourism, who's about protecting our environment, that is extremely important to us. And so when we argue about getting greater autonomy, it's so that we can do these simple things for ourselves. We have city corporations who can have their own police force, the localized police force. We can't do that in the THA. We sent a bill to Parliament since with Orville London. All now it can reach the Parliament floor, all now. Orville leave politics, he went to become a High Commissioner. Orville returned to Tobago. I tried inviting Orville along with other former chief secretaries and chairmen. We were first have a meeting on Thursday. He told me quite nicely, he told my office quite nicely, I am retired from public life. I don't want anything to do with public life. I just want to be away from public life. I have to respect the man. But the point is, look at how long ago we set that down and it did not have the time of day. So yes, to answer you in short, we will be working with the central government. And once I'm at this chair, we will have cordial relationships as far as is possible. I had a very cordial meeting with Minister Imbert, and he's supposed to be like the Grinchiest, the meanest of the bunch down in central government. But we had an extremely professional, extremely cordial, extremely jovial meeting, very productive meeting just last week. We had that meeting. And I expect to have a lot more of that, because at the end of the day, it's not about our political ego, it's about fixing things for the people of the island. How do we fix things for the people of the island and by extension, the country? The only sticking point where I know we will have some rabs over is the issue of greater autonomy for Tobago. And if you understand the history, if you understand the politics, if you understand the needs of Tobago, if you understand the need for us to secure Tobago's identity within a larger Trini identity that tends to envelop that which is Trinidad and Tobago, you will understand why there is a need for us to do this. But being very vociferous and very forceful about our need for greater autonomy does not mean that we cannot work together and that we no longer love you guys in Trinidad. We love you all the same, and we want to keep working with you the same. We just saying, let's look around the world and we'll see how power is devolved from the center to outlying regions. There's nothing new here. Little St. Kitts and Nevis has a federation. Nevis has a state government. St. Kitts doesn't, but they have a federation. Big United Kingdom have devolved powers. Scotland passes its own laws, so does Wales and Northern Ireland and so on. But guess what? It's one United Kingdom. The big US of A, third most populous in the world. I think it is. Yes, third most populous in the world. They have a federation. So there are models all over the country about devolving power while maintaining a united country. And that's all we hope for. And we have far too many friends and family in Trinidad to hate Trinidadians or to hate Trinidad. In fact, there are more Tobagonians living in Trinidad than living on the island of Tobago at the moment. And it has been that way for donkey years. So we look forward to keeping the union together and at the same time causing our democracy, our republic to mature. We have to mature. We have to move past our Republican constitution. We have to upgrade it, bring it into the 21st century. It's not just about the THA. Several other areas, local government reform. We have been talking that for a long time. We have done nothing there, but we just have to get to that place where we can move on from our Republican constitution. It has served us well for so many years. It's time for a significant upgrade. And I'm just looking for the government to do what needs to be done to get it right, because we have had several governments past and present They're just talking about constitutional reform, and it never ever gets done. Everybody gets their chickens out at the last minute, but we just have to do it because what we have is not workable for the 21st century. So let's get it done. Let's get the work done and build out us an even superior Trinidad and Tobago.
And in terms of getting the work done, we want to make that commitment to provide a facility to speak to some of the individual secretaries as time progresses, so that individuals get an idea, okay, well, this is their remit, this is what this person is supposed to do. And with that understanding, it is easier to go forward. So we want to thank you very much, Chief
And
Sec.
I want to extend an invitation to you and the team to come to Tobago, right? We do have communication challenges sometimes, but we do have good technology here too. So please come to Tobago. I believe your board chairman, I think he's married to a Tobagonian, and yes, Tobagonian family members and so on. Dike, you know you have friends in Tobago from UB days. You'll come to Tobago. Let us extend some good Tobago hospitality along with our lady, good Tobago cooking and thing. And come to Tobago. You can run your show from Tobago some days. We will facilitate, and that will help too. That will help in showing that we are committed to this thing called Trinidad and Tobago, and that the building out of Tobago is really about building out the country as a whole and ensuring that we create the best Trinidad and Tobago that is globally competitive, and that continues to be the single best run country in the entire Caribbean region. And I say that.
Say that and smile and rub your hand. Well,
Yeah.
and that is the perfect point for us to bring the curtains down on this conversation. But thank you so much for lending the time and your perspective, and even extra time for the social media platform, Chief Sec. And we want to thank you once again, if you're tuned in, for tuning in and for joining us on this episode of In Depth with Dike Rostant. Have a good one.